Let's take a look at the Marriott Bonvoy annual report. And this is what we're currently have on the screen. This is the Marriott International 2022 annual report. We just want to take a glimpse, get a feel for what's in this report. Remember, we learned about financial versus non-financial information, and we start out with a letter to the stockholders from the president and CEO of Marriott, giving some highlights, talking about what they've been able to do over the past year and where they're going forward. All right. That's several pages. And then we get the information that goes to the SEC. So this is specifically to the government in terms of being a publicly traded company. We'll talk more about the role of the SEC in Chapter 3. But this gives you an idea of what's in this report, the table of contents. You can see it's over 70 pages long. The first part is lots of writing, lots of descriptions. You see a list of all of the different hotel chains that are actually managed by Marriott that you might not have realized, like Sheraton and Renaissance hotels, things like that. Some discussion from the management of the company about what's happened. A lot more detail than in that original letter, but probably covering some of the very same things. Breakdown of how many properties they have, some non-financial information that way, but that would be very helpful to see how they're doing and how they're growing in terms of their financial picture, even though it's non-financial information. So we go down here, like it says in your textbook, to page 36, where the financial statements actually start. And the financial statements, which is our focus in this class, and of course, all of those other pieces of information previously help us understand this financial information. And so we have, and the more times you can look at financial statements, the more time you spend with them, the better you are able to understand what they're saying. The idea is they're telling a story that's we believe to be indication of how well Marriott is doing. And so as we get used to the format and what they communicate, we are better able to understand the story that they tell. So we have a statement of income or income statement. We'll talk more about the detail about that, but notice some things that we always want to remember when we're looking at financial information. First of all, we need to know what time period it is, and that should always be in the heading. So they've actually shown us 3 years, fiscal years, side by side, so that we can make comparisons. You can see the increases, decreases, the trend, and you can see how 2020 was pandemic related, so was 2021. You see how much increase in revenue happened in 2022. That's the idea, is to compare side by side what's been happening, so we know what direction Marriott is going. A single year in isolation or single time period doesn't give us as much information. Okay, these are the financial statements that we will talk about, the balance sheet, especially in Chapter 3 as far as how they're laid out. But again, there's 2 years for the year ended, okay? And then the cash flow, we'll learn about that in a statement of stockholders' equity. So the only statement that they have here that we will not really talk about is the statement of comprehensive income. You see it's pretty short, not a lot of information anyway. So we're not going to worry too much about that until an intermediate accounting class, but for our purposes, these are the statements. This is where they belong in this report. And then there are pieces of information, numbers that don't make sense or explanation, then they have footnotes. Okay, and this is where they give you some more legalistic detail about some of those numbers. And so if you don't see something that you don't understand the terminology, often you can look it up in the footnotes and find a lot more information about it, that sort of thing. One way, this is a PDF file. You can do a search of certain terms into the footnotes and maybe find some additional information about things like goodwill or other types of assets and what they mean by that and how they have applied the accounting rules that the FASB makes. And we're going to talk more about, or we talked about in chapter 2. All right. So this is the footnotes. So kind of a mix of financial and non-financial information to help us get a better term. And it goes on for, like I said, about 20 more pages to explain the financial statements that took just 4 or 5 pages. So that should give you your first taste of the financial statements, see what they look like, the ones that we're going to talk about, learn about in chapter 3, those 4 statements, and we'll get some other opportunities once we've got that behind us to kind of get a feel for what it is that these each communicate.